The Native American tribes, or more commonly called Indians, have captured the imaginations of adults and children alike, and evokes images of feather-wearing, war-painted warriors riding bareback across the American plains. But only a handful of these famed warriors has ever become a household name. This is the history of Sitting Bull. According to family oral tradition, Sitting Bull was born along the Yellowstone River, south of present-day Miles City, Montana, sometime between 1831 and 1837. At birth, he was given the name Jumping Badger, and in early infancy was nicknamed Slow due to his careful and unhurried nature. At the age of 14, Sitting Bull accompanied a group of Lakota warriors in a riding party to take horses from a camp of Crow warriors. He displayed bravery by riding forward and counting coup on one of the surprised Crows, which was witnessed by the other mounted Lakota. Upon returning to camp, his father gave a celebratory feast, at which he conferred his own name upon his son. While the name in the Lakota language roughly translates to Buffalo who sits down, Americans came to commonly refer to him as Sitting Bull. In the aftermath of the Dakota War in 1862, in which Sitting Bull's people were not involved, the United States Army retaliated in 1863 and in 1864, even against bands that had not been involved in the hostilities. In 1864, two brigades of over 2,000 soldiers under Brigadier General Alfred Sully attacked a village in what is known as the Battle of Killdeer Mountain. The defenders were led by Sitting Bull, Gell, and Hunkpapa. Both the Lakota and the Dakota were driven out, but skirmishing continued into August at the Battle of the Badlands. Later that year, Sitting Bull and about 100 Hunkpapa Lakota encountered a small party near what is now Marmarth, North Dakota. They had been left behind by a wagon train commanded by Captain James L. Frisk to effect some repairs to an overturned wagon. When he led an attack, Sitting Bull was shot in the left hip by a soldier. The bullet exited through the small of his back, and the wound was not serious. Sitting Bull's band of Hunkpapa continued to attack migrating parties and forts into the late 1860s. In 1871, the Northern Pacific Railway conducted a survey for a route across the Northern Plains, directly through Hunkpapa lands. It encountered stiff Lakota resistance. The same railway people returned the following year, accompanied by federal troops. Sitting Bull and the Hunkpapa attacked the survey party, which was forced to turn back. In 1873, the military accompaniment for the surveyors was increased again, but Sitting Bull's forces resisted the survey most vigorously. The Panic of 1873 forced the Northern Pacific Railway backers into bankruptcy. This halted construction of the railroad through the Lakota, Dakota and Nakota territory. In 1874, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer led a military expedition from Fort Abraham Lincoln near Bismarck to explore the Black Hills for gold and to determine a suitable location for a military fort in the hills. Custer's announcements of gold in the Black Hills triggered the Black Hills Gold Rush. Tensions increased between the Lakota and the European Americans seeking to move into the Black Hills. Although Sitting Bull did not attack Custer's expedition in 1874, the US government was increasingly pressured by citizens to open the Black Hills to mining and settlement. Failing to negotiate a purchase or lease of the hills, the government in Washington had to find a way around the promise to protect the Sioux in their land, as specified in the Treaty of 1868. In November 1875, President Grant ordered all Sioux bands outside the Great Sioux Reservation to move onto the reservation, knowing full well that not all would comply. As of the 1st of February 1876, the Interior Department certified as hostile those bands who continued to live off the reservation. This certification allowed the military to pursue Sitting Bull and other Lakota bands as hostiles. During the period of 1868 to 1876, Sitting Bull developed into one of the most important Native American political leaders. After the Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868 and the creation of the Great Sioux Reservation, many traditional Sioux warriors such as Red Cloud and Spotted Tail moved to reside permanently on the reservations. Sitting Bull's refusal to adopt any dependence on the US government meant that at times he and his small band of warriors lived isolated on the plains. When Native Americans were threatened by the United States, numerous members of various Sioux bands and other tribes such as the Northern Cheyenne came to Sitting Bull's camp. His reputation for strong medicine developed as he continued to evade the European Americans. After the ultimatum of January 1st, 1876, when the US Army began to track down as hostiles those Sioux and others living off the reservation, Native Americans gathered at Sitting Bull's camp. He took an active role in encouraging this unity camp. He sent scouts to the reservations to recruit warriors and told the Hunkpapa to share supplies with those Native Americans who joined them. Over the course of the first half of 1876, Sitting Bull's camp continually expanded as natives joined him for safety in numbers. His leadership had attracted warriors and families, creating an extensive village estimated at more than 10,000 people. Lieutenant Colonel Custer came across this large camp on June the 25th. Sitting Bull did not take a direct military role in the ensuing battle. Instead, he acted as a spiritual leader. A week prior to the attack, he had performed the sun dance, in which he fasted and sacrificed over 100 pieces of flesh from his arms. Prior to the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Sitting Bull had a vision in which he saw many soldiers as thick as grasshoppers falling upside down into the Lakota camp, which his people took as a foreshadowing of a major victory in which many soldiers would be killed. The Confederated Lakota tribes with the Northern Cheyenne defeated the 7th Cavalry under Lieutenant George Armstrong Custer on the 25th of June 1876, annihilating Custer's battalion and seemingly to fulfill Sitting Bull's vision. Sitting Bull's leadership inspired his people to a major victory. In response, the US government sent thousands more soldiers to the area, forcing many of the Lakota to surrender over the next year. Sitting Bull refused to surrender, and in May 1877 he led his band north to Wood Mountain, Northwest Territories. He remained there until 1881, when he and most of his band returned to the US territory and surrendered to US forces. Hunger and desperation eventually forced Sitting Bull and 186 of his family and followers to return to the United States and surrender on the 19th of July 1881. Sitting Bull and his young son Crowfoot surrendered his Winchester rifle to Major David H. Brotherton, commanding officer of Fort Buford. Sitting Bull said to Brotherton, "I wish it to be remembered that I was the last man of my tribe to surrender my rifle." Sitting Bull and his band were transferred to Fort Yates, the military post located adjacent to the Standing Rock Agency Reservation. In 1885, Sitting Bull was allowed to leave this reservation to go wild westing on the Buffalo Bills Wild West show. He earned about $50 a week for riding once around the arena, where he was a popular attraction, although it is rumoured that he cursed his audiences in his native tongue during the show. After working as a performer with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, Sitting Bull returned to the Standing Rock Agency in South Dakota. Because of fears that Sitting Bull would use his influence to support the ghost dance movement, Indian Service agents James McClellan at Fort Yates ordered his arrest. During the ensuing struggle between Sitting Bull's followers and the agency police, Sitting Bull was shot in the side of the head by Standing Rock policeman Lieutenant Bullhead and Red Tomahawk, after the police were fired upon by Sitting Bull's supporters. His body was taken to nearby Fort Yates for burial. Then, in 1953, his Lakota family exhumed what were believed to be his remains, reburying them near Mobbridge, South Dakota, near his birthplace.